assemble and worship God, as always, I pray that what I say will be pleasing in His sight, that each of us will strengthen our soul from our time together. This morning, I would like to take a look at an account in the scriptures that I know that we all know very well, and this comes from the account of the rich man and Lazarus. This passage, it has just a wealth of information that we can take from it. We can look at it from many different angles and learn different things from it. But today I would like us to focus on what the sinner, the rich man, what he learned after his death. We study this passage often, and we look at it as looking at the terrible punishment that hell is, and that's part of what we'll look at this morning, and what kind of place that would be if we find ourselves to be there for eternity, and how awful that would be, and what we should do to avoid that. But there's more to this passage than just that. In this account, we can learn at least 5 things that this sinner found out after it was too late. In this story, once this rich man had died and left the earth, he learned some things about his life that hopefully we can learn from his mistakes and make corrections in ours, or help others make corrections in their life before it's too late, because for him it was too late. So turn over to Luke 16 and beginning in verse 19 to get this account in our minds. And if you're old-fashioned and using a Bible, you may want to put the marker there so you can get back to it quickly. If I'm saying old-fashioned in a Bible, hopefully you're looking at it on your phone or something to read and follow along. But Luke chapter 16 and beginning in verse 19, because we're going to be going back to this passage throughout our study today. There was a certain rich man who was clothed in fine purple and fine linen and fared sumptuously every day. But there was also a certain beggar named Lazarus, full of sores, who was laid at his gate, desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. So it was that the beggar died and was carried by the angels to Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. And being in torments in Hades, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom. Then he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. But Abraham said, Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he is comforted, and you are tormented. And besides all this, between us and you there is a great gulf fixed, so that those who want to pass from here to you cannot, nor can those from there to pass to us. Then he said, I beg you, therefore, Father, that you would send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, that he may testify to them, lest they also come to this place of torment. Then Abraham said to him, They have Moses and the prophets, let them hear them. And he said, No, Father Abraham, but if one goes to them from the dead, they will repent. But he said to him, If they will not hear Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rise from the dead. So when we look at this account, what can we see that this sinner learned? Well, first, the rich man learned that his wealth meant nothing. Once he had died and left this earth, his money was useless. He could not buy his way out of this place that he had found himself in. Think about how much emphasis we as a society place on our material wealth. It's a status symbol to have certain brands of clothes or drive a specific kind of car. We saw a commercial for one, and I didn't see it quick. They flashed the number so quick, I didn't know if it was a lease payment for a 3-year period or if it was your car payment for, at that price, probably a 30-year period. But the payment on this car was $1,300 and some dollars for a car. Now, it was a good looking car, and it had a name attached to it that people would say, ooh, that's fancy. It was a Maserati. $1,300 and some dollars a month to drive that. Now, as nice as that car would be, and I'm sure it is fancy, the Toyota Corolla or any vehicle with four wheels and doors would get you from point A to point B the same way. But we would look at that and say, oh, that person's far better off than we are because they can afford this kind of car. We're not successful unless we have some fancy car or clothes or house. And some may even look down on others that do not strive to have the same things that they have. That, well, they're lazy. They can't work and afford the things that we finance. A funny story, and we'll think it's funny when I tell this about the neighborhood that we're in, but I was talking to one of our former mayor's wives, or his only wife, but anyway, I was talking to her, and years ago, they used to have a house out here on Western Avenue. I'm pretty sure she said it was Western Avenue. And she was saying how that they would drive by the houses in my neighborhood, and she thought that's where the rich people lived. Now, we know what this neighborhood's like. That's where they lived. That's all they could afford at that time. They looked to our neighborhood and thought it was the wealthy neighborhood. Well, you should see the house that they live in now. It's gigantic. And by some standards, though, you know what? It's a middle class home. Not by mine, but by many standards. So wealth is relative. It's not a set amount. Well, if I have X number of dollars, then I'm wealthy. It's looking back at it, at the time of Christ, he was teaching them the same story to warn them that were trusting and placing their focus on their income. Look at the difference this man had. And while studying this, it's interesting. If we look back to Luke 16, verses 13 and 14, you can see that's what Jesus is warning them about serving God and trying to serve worldliness at the same time, those two masters. In verse 13, he says, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Now the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, heard these things, and they derided him. Well, we want money. That derided, that means that they treated him with the utmost of contempt because they loved their money more. And like many today, when the truth is presented to them and it smacks them upside the head, they got angry at the truth, not at what was being said, not because they needed to change. They got angry because somebody said it to them. They wanted to keep their money and they wanted to show it off. But look at, in Luke 16, look at the life that this rich man lived while he was on this earth. From our text in verses 19 through 22, he lived a privileged life. He wore purple. That was a sign of wealth and affluence in that time. Fine linen. He wasn't wearing rags and torn up clothes. He was clothed very well. He lived far better than Lazarus. Lazarus would have been happy with just the crumb, not the crumbs on the table, the crumbs that fell off onto the floor from the table. Would have been more than he had. But in the end, when we look at this story that Jesus tells here, in the end, both men died, didn't they? The rich man died just like Lazarus did. And after he died, he found himself to be in a far worse position. How did his wealth help him once he left this world? We note that when Lazarus died, he was carried to paradise. When the rich man died, he was just buried. Where was all of his money then? What good did it do him then? All that he had accumulated, all the way that he lived, the fine lifestyle that he'd created for himself and was accustomed to, where was it now? Jesus reminds us that our self-worth and our being is more. It's worth more than just our possessions. Luke chapter 12, and beginning in verse 13, there's nothing wrong with having our needs met. There's nothing wrong with saving and having money and preparing for our future needs. In fact, it would be very irresponsible and sinful if we were wasteful with what we had, to the point that we then had to turn and get help from others, because we would be taking that help away from those who had a legitimate need. That would be irresponsible on our part. But it's more, our life is more than the accumulation of our possessions. We see this in Luke chapter 12 and beginning in verse 13. Then one from the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or an arbitrator over you?" And then he said to them, "Take heed and beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses." Then he spoke a parable to them, saying, "The ground of a certain rich man yielded plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do? Since I have no room to store my crops." Well, what a problem to have. I have so much stuff, I don't have the room to keep it all. What am I going to do with it? Well, here's what I'll do. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there I will store all my crops and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, Fool, this night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you have provided? So is he who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Again, as a Christian, if we live wastefully and we're not good stewards of what we have been blessed with, we're in the wrong. We need to make some preparation for our future. Wouldn't that be sinful if we just waste everything that we have? Or the problem is with this rich fool, when we read this, the problem is he left God out of everything. He put all of his focus and his trust in himself and in his possessions. Look at what I have done. Look at all, never mind that the ground that he planted the seeds in was from God, and the seeds themselves came from God, and the increase that he had seen came from God. That's what I've done. Look at what I've done. Look at what I have. And in all that abundance, he also didn't think about helping anybody else, did he? That's why Jesus was warning about being covetous. And that is an unlawful desire to have the property of another, or the desire to gain riches beyond what is necessary for our needs. Not having enough to take care of yourself, that's not being covetous. When it becomes covetousness is when I want what you have. Maybe some people in our political world could listen to that today. Why is it wrong for someone to want to keep what they've earned, but it's not wrong for somebody to want to take it from them? Not to satisfy a need, but wants. We were watching TV yesterday, and there was an ad that came on, and I went perfectly with the gambling lesson that we had a few weeks ago. And this ad said, if you're broke, and that was the first words of this ad. If you're broke, download this app and start making money. Well, it was a gambling app. Don't go to the casinos. Just download. How are they making money off of that? They're wanting something that they've not worked for. That's why they're broke, because they're going to the casinos gambling. We place all of this energy in wanting things and trying to gain more things that we don't need. We don't need this to survive. And then once we have it, we put all of our trust in this material wealth. And when we do that, there's no question, like this rich farmer here, that we're going to be leaving God out of our life. We won't be putting our faith and our trust in God because we're putting it in ourselves. And that's what Paul warns when he's instructing Timothy here and charging him in 1 Timothy chapter 6 to teach this to others, to those who are rich. All sorts of evil grows out of our love and our desire to have money. It could be what we're willing to do to get it, or it could be what we're willing to do to keep it. 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 10, for the love of money is the root of all evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. Oh, why is that? Because of my desire to have more and more and more. It's the root of all evil because I'm willing to sin to get it. I'm willing to sin to keep it. And Paul gives that charge in verses 17 through 19 to those who are wealthy. No, there's no sin in having money. We may have it through work. We may have it through an inheritance. But remember to put your trust in God, not in the money. Don't forget where our security really comes from. Whatever we gain in this world, it's perishing. It's going to die off. We're not going to take it with us. In verse 17 there, command those who are rich in this present age not to be haughty, nor to trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God, who gives us richly all things to enjoy. Let them do good, that they may be rich in good works, ready to give, willing to share, storing up for themselves a good foundation for the time to come, that they may lay hold on on eternal life. Those valuable possessions, the things that we have, or the money that we accumulate. What do we have to do? Well, if it's a car or a house, we're continuously having to work to keep it clean or running right. And every time you get it out to drive it, you got to worry about something happening to it, somebody scratching it. A house is continual maintenance. We'll drive through Highland Park, and Jenny always says, oh, I love those houses over there. I say, they're beautiful, but they're old houses, and all I see is one project after the other. Because that's what they look to me, because nothing's going to be bought at Lowe's. You're going to have to retrofit everything you get. Just one worry after the other. Or those investments that we have, that we look at and see growing. No, there's, again, part of what Paul tells them is to have some, to take care of yourself, but be willing to share that. Those investments that we're holding on too tight, they could be gone in the blink of an eye. And if we put every ounce of our trust and our hope there, number one, what are we going to do when it is gone? What will we have left? And number two, what are we going to do when we leave it here on this earth? That's what he was asking the rich farmer there. I've got so many crops and goods that I've got to rebuild my barns to hold them all. Well, now you've died and you've left them. What's going to happen to them? When it comes time for my soul to be required of me and to give an answer for it, what good is all of that stuff that I've stored up? If I've not used it properly, it's not going to give me anything worthwhile. And in fact, it'll be detrimental. And even if we're assuming, this is assuming that we're able to hold on to it all until we die and leave this earth. Many people lose it long before that. Think of all the things that have happened. I was watching a video about a person that had given away. Now, that's a lot of money to give away, but she had given away through a scam artist $300,000 to some man that she was in a romantic relationship with online that she had never met for over a course of 3 years. Of Where was all that? I mean, that's a nest egg of money. And it was on a podcast, and the person said, "Honey, he's not real. This person is a bot in some foreign country, and you've been giving out money to them, and it's gone. All that trust that we had, that, oh, it was going to have money coming back for what I was giving out. All the scams that can happen here, all the dips in the stock market that have wiped out people's fortunes because of the timing of them. Look back over history if we don't think it can happen. Look back at some of the empires through history that have fallen. Even recently, places like Venezuela and some of the countries that they had a booming economy. And many look to that as the model for socialism, and it's fallen. Their gas prices were like 20 cents a gallon. It was some ridiculously low number because of all the subsidies that they had given to it. It crashed. Their money wasn't worth anything. You couldn't use it for toilet paper. A truckload of it wouldn't be worth anything because nothing was backing it. If our hope in our future was placed in what are we going to do when it's gone? But Jesus tells us, he warns us, if we're able to amass all of the wealth in the world, Matthew chapter 16 and verse 26, if we could combine the wealth of, of Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Elon Musk, if we could have combined all of their wealth together, guess what? It still wouldn't accumulate all the wealth of the world. They're three very wealthy men, but they don't have it all. And he's saying we would trade every bit of that to redeem our soul from hell. Have we thought about that question? He asked, what would you give in exchange for your soul? In Matthew chapter 16 and verse 26, for what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? That's two haunting questions. What is your soul worth? If we could see our soul in hell eternally, what material possession or earthly pleasure would we look at and say, yes, that's worth it? That is worth placing my soul in hell for an eternity. Doing that, having that pleasure for a few fleeting years on earth was worth my soul being in hell eternally. That's what Jesus is asking us here. What would we give? What thing would we want to keep? Maybe we should look at it that way. What do I have that I would want to keep and hold on to so tightly that I would be willing to send my soul to hell eternally to have it? Is there anything that is worth that much? Well, Jesus says that we would give it all if we had it. If we could accumulate it all, or if we could possibly enjoy every sinful desire without physical consequences, which none of them come with that. They all have consequences, but if we could enjoy them all while we're on this earth, give in to every sinful desire that we have, every sinful desire that man can devise, and there are many, we would give it all away once we find ourselves in torment. But as the rich man saw, it was too late for that. How sad it is that we would be willing to sacrifice our soul when we have the opportunity to make changes. But rarely or never do we sacrifice our soul because we gained everything. Oh, we sell our soul for far, far less. Things that we know that we shouldn't be getting involved with, pleasures that we know we shouldn't be doing. I don't do all of them, do just one or two. But it doesn't even have to be that. It doesn't even have to be something sinful directly. It's something that we're putting in front of God. Maybe it's that Sunday activity that takes us away from our worship together. Maybe it's the job and the enticement of extra hours and income that takes us away from our family or from our service to God outside of our worship service, our service to Him. Jesus is telling us there's no doubt you would trade every moment of that once we're in hell, but it will be too late. And the one thing that the rich man learned after living lavishly on this earth, he saw that the rich and the poor have one thing in common. Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 2. Those with money, they can look down while they're on this earth on those that are without. Those without can be envious or hate those who have worked hard and have accumulated things. But whatever side we're on, we're going to find out that we all meet right here at this moment. At our death, we see that God made us all. Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 2, the rich and the poor have this in common. The Lord is the maker of them all. Yes, and at our death is when we're going to face Him in judgment. Even those who are the most financially secure on this earth, they're going to have the same size or roughly the same size grave as the man who has absolutely nothing when they die. Their funeral might be more elaborate. Their coffin might be fancier. But they end up in the same place and they have to stand before the same God in judgment. No matter how large our bank account is, our graves are all going to be the same size. And more importantly than that, we're all going to have to stand and give an account to the Lord. And maybe that person that has more, well, there's going to be more required of him. Why didn't you help? You had opportunity. That rich man had opportunity while he was alive. He was in a position where he could have helped and done more, but he didn't. His wealth meant nothing when he died. Sadly, he also learned, as we talked about, after he died, it's too late. It's too late to make changes, to show mercy when he did have that opportunity. Your soul's fate is sealed at that moment. It was too late to go back and show mercy to Lazarus when he could have. James chapter 2 and beginning in verse 13. Had he shown mercy, think about this man that was living so sumptuously. Don't laugh at me. I heard you. He lived sumptuously. Not scrumptious like we had at Thanksgiving dinner. But he lived very elaborately. And here was this beggar that had to be laid at his gate. He stepped over him. He could have been in a position where he helped that man. But that's not where he found himself, is it? In James chapter 2 and beginning in verse 13, for judgment is without mercy to those who have shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. What does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith and does not have works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to them, depart in peace, be warmed and filled, but you do not give them the things which are needed for the body, what does it profit? Oh, Lazarus was in such shape that he would have liked to have the crumbs that fell off of the man's table. How much mercy did the rich man show Lazarus? He wouldn't have even noticed those. He probably had someone sweep them up and throw them away. Lazarus didn't ask for a seat at his table. He didn't ask for his chair at his table. He didn't even ask for the meal that the rich man was eating, just some of the crumbs that had fallen on the floor. That's what Luke 16 and verse 21 said. Instead, Lazarus had help from the dogs. They showed more compassion on this rich man as they licked his sores. And once he died, it was far too late for him to help those who needed it. The rich man had an opportunity while he was alive to do something to help Lazarus. Here was a man that was laid at his gate. He had to walk over or around him to get in and out of his property. He was destitute of his daily needs, like we were reading in James there. This person is, and I hate to use the word legitimately in need, because there are plenty who say they're in need, but they're really not. This man was legitimately in need. He wasn't able to work. He had to be brought and laid at his gate. It wasn't like he brought himself there and was able-bodied. He was placed there. The rich man could have helped him with his daily needs. He had the opportunity. He had the ability. He had the means of someone that was right in front of him that was destitute. He did nothing to help him when he easily could have. He missed his opportunity. And once we miss that opportunity, it's too late to go back and secure our salvation. 2 Peter chapter 3 and beginning in verse 9. The Lord does not want anyone to perish. That's not what, He has not set us up here for failure. He does not take joy in seeing us punished. But one day his patience will be exhausted, and it will be time to answer to him. 2 Peter chapter 3 and verse 9, the Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some count slackness, but is long-suffering toward us, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. Both the earth and the works that are in it will be burned up. Therefore, since all these things will be dissolved, what manner of persons ought you to be in holy conduct and godliness, looking for and hastening the coming of the day of God, because of which the heavens will be dissolved, being on fire, and the elements will melt with fervent heat. This time may come for us. We don't know when it's going to be. It may be at the end of time, if we live that long, or it just may be at the end of our lives. Either way, the result is the same. Our time for changing is over. Verse 9 tells us that God doesn't want us to perish. And He's taking a long time. He's giving us a long time to come to this word that is so bad in our society today, at the end of verse 9, to repentance. That means that we have time to change. But, and that verse 10 starts with that big word, but. God doesn't want anyone to perish. He wants us all to repent, but that day is going to come when we least expect it, that thief in the night. It's going to surprise us. I don't know of anyone that in whatever state that their life has become, when death comes, it's still unexpected. No one's sitting here, or what if something happened to them to prevent them before they died from making changes in their life. We see so quickly how life can change. And that's what we're being warned about here in verse 10. The day of the Lord, His return, or our going to meet Him, is going to come as a surprise. Now, the last day, everything's going to change. All that is on this earth is going to be gone. All of our security, all that we know, it's going to be destroyed with fervent heat. The works of this earth and the elements, everything around us. When's that going to happen? There have been predictions throughout history. We're still here, aren't we? People have guessed over the years. I mean, some have had more credibility, or maybe gotten more traction than others, but people have made guesses throughout the time, at the end of time. But We don't know. Jesus says he doesn't know. All these people that think that we're going to see some kind of a sign, we don't know. There is no sign. None of the things that are happening in the Middle East, none of the things that are happening in this country, none of that is a sign that the end of time is coming. The thief in the night doesn't give you a sign. When is it going to happen? We don't know. We don't know. We all have things on our calendars of some sort for next week, don't we? We all have something we've got to take care of this week. Maybe a scheduled doctor's appointment. But you know what we can do? We can change those, can't we? But what happens to us? We maybe forget about them. We may need to reschedule it. We can make changes to our calendar on this earth. This is a day and a time that none of us know when it's going to happen. And we're going to be there. We're going to keep it. But what happens to us and thinking about, oh, I have time, I have good health, I feel fine, there's no reason for me to worry about that. I have lots of time to make these corrections. Well, what about those who say that, but have some kind of an accident, some kind of a medical condition that happens to them, maybe through a car crash, maybe just something physically happens to them. They're still alive, but it's too late to secure their salvation. Maybe something physically or mentally happens, and our fate is then sealed. Not through death, but because something has happened to us that prevents us from obeying. Oh, what a tragic end to be alive, but be unable to make changes. And I know that we can probably think of people that has happened to. There was a man on the news this morning. Now, he fortunately saved his mental capacity, but he could no longer walk. He was driving his truck and he was, I'm assuming, drunk by the way that they described it, but whatever happened, he lost control and he flipped it several times. It threw him out of it. His life changed. He was a very active, athletic man, and now all of a sudden he is wheelchair bound. That's how fast life can change. And if we wait until it's too late, there's going to be nothing that we can do about it. This evening, we're going to finish with this point and then look at a couple more things that the rich man learned after he had died. If you're subject to the Lord's invitation in any way, take this time to think about the condition of your soul and make those changes now while we have the opportunity as we stand and sing.
Have you been to Jesus?